Do you ever feel exhausted as a business owner where you just feel like you can't go one more day doing the thing that you do? Stay tuned and I'll show you how I was able to manage to build 7 multi-million-dollar companies in a place where I don't lose either motivation or discipline to do the things that I want to do. So stay tuned. All right, guys, welcome to today's show. My name is Jimmy Cadillo. I'm hoping that you're having a very blessed day. The big man upstairs gave us an opportunity to wake up today. So we are certainly going to give it a go and put our best foot forward to become the person that we want to become. So anyways, with that being said, today's video, what I want to talk about is something that my producer brought up and that I have had many of conversations about. And what is that exactly, right? So how do you stay motivated, right? Or how do you continue to get up every single day and do the things that you need to do for your business when times are challenging, right? When times are good, everybody wants to do the thing, right? When times are good, you don't have a problem waking up in the morning for the most part. When times are good and you're making money, you don't have a problem putting in the very next day. When times are good, you don't mind staying in late. When times are good, you don't mind working weekends. When times are good, you don't mind doing any of the extra little ancillary things that you have to do in order to be a successful business owner when times are good. So what do you do when times are bad, right? So what keeps you going when times aren't good? What keeps you going when you're not making any money? What keeps you going when bills are stockpiling? What keeps you going when things don't work out exactly the way you had planned? What keeps you going when you lose some employees? What keeps you going when you can't hire enough people? Like, what keeps you going when all of these things are going to hit you on a day-to-day basis when you are trying to operate a business of any kind, right? So, this is going to be my experience and what I have come to realize in operating multiple businesses. I've exited some businesses. I currently operate 7 businesses now. We do upwards in the amount of anywhere between $15 to $20 million in revenue now. And this is what I have learned on how to achieve within that business and how to be able to stay not necessarily motivated, but to stay disciplined in doing the things that you need to do every day when things aren't going as well. So I'll start at the beginning, and here's what I mean by that. When you initially start the business, I did another video, which we'll probably link somewhere down below, where I talked about discipline and I talk about the difference between motivation and discipline. And I talk about the fact that when you start a business, you should always start with the end in mind. What do I mean by that? When I say start with the end in mind, what I'm talking about is reverse engineer, right? Or invert, partner of Warren Buffett says, right? Invert or reverse engineer, I call, right? Charlie Munger, sorry, the name escaped me for a second. But reverse engineer or invert from the end to the beginning. In other words, start with the end in mind. You open up a business. Where do you want to get to? Like, what do you want to achieve long term? What do you want the business to look like at its apex, right? Like when you get to the promised land, what does that look like for you? What does that actually mean? Once you have that apex, once you have that end in mind of what your goal or what it is you're trying to achieve ultimately, then you reverse engineer from that moment backward. And here's why it helps when times are bad. And here's why it keeps you disciplined to continue to do the things that you need to do, even though things aren't currently working out, or maybe something bad happened, or you lost some money, or you're losing some employees, or things aren't moving as fast as you want them to move, right? When you start with the end in mind and you invert or reverse engineer from there back to the beginning, all of a sudden you understand that the process, right? The process of getting to the end, to the place that you said you wanted to be at when you started, everything in between backward all the way to the beginning is just part of the process, right? It's not going to be perfect. You try to plan for things, but the reality is that things aren't always going to work out exactly as you want them to work out. And the reality is that as long as you understand what the end is going to look like for you, everything in between and everything that happens in between not necessarily is irrelevant, but it doesn't keep you from the ultimate goal of understanding that really what you're trying to achieve was nothing in the middle, right? That's what reverse engineering will do for you is everything in the middle is irrelevant in the sense that you weren't trying to achieve anything in the middle anyways, right? The achievement, the thing that you're trying to get to is going to be the end. And if the end is what you're after, then everything else in the middle just becomes part of the process, right? It is all of the pain that you have to go through and how you need to maneuver, things that you need to shift and pivot that are inevitably going to get you to the end in mind, right? So in other words, when I started my print company, for example, I'll give you a perfect example. I started my print company. And when I started my print company, I knew that it was a long road only because I had never opened up a company before. I had never operated a company. I always worked for somebody. I made great money, but I never had done my own thing. So really, I was kind of a fish out of water, right? I really didn't understand how to operate business. I didn't know how to open up a company, articles of incorporation, like all of the basics that you need in order to open up a business. I didn't know how to do any of those. So, but here's what I did know. I knew very clearly what I wanted to get to. And what I wanted to get to in my initial goal with the company was, listen, I want to get to $5 million a year in revenue. And here's why that number mattered to me. I knew that if I got to $5 million a year in revenue, based on what I had projected my net to gross margin would look like, at $5 million, I would have easily replaced my income that I was leaving, that I was accustomed to and used to living on a day-to-day basis because I made really good money. So now all of a sudden I was going to be able to have some of the freedom and I would have replaced more than 100% of my living income that I just left from the job that I just had, right? So great. If I knew that from the very beginning, that was my ultimate goal. Great. So then I just reversed engineer. In order for me to get 5 million, based on the average price of every mail piece that I was selling, how many mail pieces did I need to sell total on any given month over a 12-month period in order for me to make 5 million bucks? Well, then I got that math. I put it on a Google sheet at the time or an Excel sheet at the time. And I went ahead and just engineered what that looks like down to each individual mail piece, right? Because that's what we were selling. We were selling mail pieces. Now, once I got those mail pieces in order, and once I knew what it's going to take to get to the ultimate goal of 5 million, then I just reversed engineer from there and said, okay, great. Right now I'm doing zero, right? I just started. So what's it going to take for me as I reversed engineer back to the beginning of time? In other words, what does it look like as I scale and go down the runway? So I gave myself like micro goals that I need to hit from the moment I started all the way down to the amount of mail pieces that I knew I needed to sell at an average price of X to get to 5 million bucks. So in other words, I went ahead and broke that down into quarters, right? So quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4 in the first year of business. And then I took every one of those quarters and then I microcosm those into a monthly goal, right? So in other words, if I want to do X amount of mail pieces in first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, great. Then what am I going to do within those quarters in order for me to realize that number? And then I broke that quarter down into individual months. Once I broke those quarters down into individual months, they broke them down into individual weeks. And then that gave me an idea of what I needed to start. And then I reversed engineer from there in order for me to be able to do that. How many people do I need to talk to? How many dealers or businesses do I need to walk into? How many phone calls do I need to make? How much pavement do I have to pound? How many opportunities do I need in the pipeline? And everything that I did from there was reversed engineered down to the micro moments or the microcosms of what my overall goal was at the end, which was going to be $5 million. And I gave myself a 36-month window. So I gave myself a 3-year window to try and get to 5 million bucks. When you do that, all of a sudden, it doesn't have to be perfect. Not every day is going to be great. Not every month is going to be good. Not every quarter is going to be good. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to look at a picture from a grander scale, right? So instead of you thinking that the roof is on fire and everything is falling apart, you don't tend to look at things that way. And you don't look at them that way because you understand very clearly that 5 million is the ultimate goal. In this particular case, 5 million was my goal. And I understood that, guess what? I got 3 years to get there. That's the timetable that I gave myself, right? So if things don't go good in 1 month or 1 quarter, that doesn't mean that I quit. It just means that, hey, I need to analyze why am I struggling? I need to fix or make some adjustments as I go. But ultimately, the road for me to get to 5 million is still the same, right? Just because I had a bad month or a bad quarter doesn't mean that I changed my overall goal of 5 million bucks by year 3. That goal never changed because that's where I started. I started with the end in mind as opposed to the other way around, right? No target to shoot for. Chances are you're probably not going to make it, right? So when you tend to do that, everything that happens in between is just going to be part of that process. So as I broke everything down, I just analyzed quarter by quarter by quarter, month by month by month. And then before you know it, again, we landed, we did $100,000, then we did 150, then we did more. And then before you know it, I actually hit the $5 million mark in my business in a little bit over a year, actually. So the marker was a 3-year kind of start with the end in mind kind of time horizon. And I hit the $5 million and not in 36 months or 3 years. I actually hit the 5 million mark in less than a year and a half. We were already doing $5 million a year in business easily. And then the rest is history. And again, because I went ahead and structured my life that way, and again, it wasn't all smooth, by the way. A year and a half to get to 5 million sounds like a lot, and it sounds like it happened relatively fast. And to some degree, I guess it did. But I'm gonna be honest, within that year and a half, I got bajillion stories, which I'm sure we'll talk about, that were just completely detrimental. And I thought they were gonna put us out of business. And I thought that the world was gonna end. And all I kept reverting back to was, hey, this is just a moment. Great, it happened. How do I get out of that moment? And how do I get back on the road to my destination? Because again, just because I had a flat tire doesn't mean that I'm still not driving the car to New York like I originally planned to. We're still going to get to New York, if that makes sense, right? In other words, there are going to be moments within that business, even if you start that way, where you are going to get flat tires, you need gas, you're going to have to pull over, you're going to have to get some rest, you're going to have to go to a motel. All of these things are going to have to happen. Just because you do those things does not mean that the goal has now changed and now you're not driving that car to New York. No, the goal is still the same. We're still going to get to New York. We just happen to get a flat tire, or we happen to have to pull over and get some snacks, or we're tired or whatever, and we are going to continue to drive, even though that day ended up not exactly as we wanted to. So the key here for you to keep going and have the discipline for you to do what you need to do is it starts from the very beginning. Start with the end in mind. Give yourself a very good time horizon and a goal. Don't make it don't make it 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years, right? Make your ultimate goal what you want to achieve at the end. And then from there, you reverse engineer and invert back to the very beginning. And then from there, if as part of your inversion, right, as part of your reverse engineering, you break it down into years and quarters, then that is perfectly fine. But again, the ultimate goal is still to get the car to whatever that destination is, and everything else that happens that you planned out is only part of the process of that plan. So anyway, so hopefully that was semi-helpful. If I said something that helped you within your entrepreneur businesses or within your journey to become an entrepreneur, or if you're already an entrepreneur that's struggling, hopefully I've said something that helped you. Hopefully I added some value to your day today in my 20 years of experience of running multiple businesses. With that being said, as always, before we exit, remember, God is your guide. He's not your ride. Be willing to do the things that you need to do and take advantage of the situations that he's going to put you in order for you to become the person that you want to be and the best version of yourself. With that being said, I appreciate you guys. Have a great day.